On the afternoon of the 6th of December 2006, normal life in Lamb Hill would soon be ripped apart when a blue Mazda screeched to a halt outside a garage owned by the Lyons family in the north of Glasgow. Inside the car were two men, Raymond Anderson and James MacDonald. They pulled on eerie latex masks, sculpted into the faces of old men, and slipped into long trench coats. Their destination was Apple Row Motors, tucked just off the bustling Balmore Road. Without a word, they pushed open the door and unleashed a hail of gunfire. Their intended target was Stephen Lyons, a rising star in the family's underworld empire. Stephen was hit badly, but he wasn't the only one. His 21-year-old cousin, an innocent bystander, was caught in the chaos. As bullets tore through the air, garage owner David Lyons scrambled for cover, but young Michael Lyons never made it out alive. Anderson and MacDonald weren't acting alone. They were hired guns for the Daniel crime clan, a group the police believed was commanded by Jamie Daniel himself. The shooting marked one of the bloodiest moments in the simmering Lyons-Daniel feud. For a brief spell, the violence cooled, but in 2010, it roared back with its most infamous killing yet: the cold-blooded execution of Kevin Gerbil Carroll, a feared Daniel enforcer, gunned down in broad daylight. Milton and Possilpark, two neighbouring strongholds in the north of Glasgow. Milton was Lyons' territory. Possilpark belonged to the Daniels. The two gangs were locked in a bitter fight for control of drugs, money, and turf, a deadly rivalry that dates back more than 2 decades. According to Underworld Whispers, it all truly ignited in 2001 when a stash of cocaine belonging to the Daniel crew vanished during a house party. Word on the street was that members of the Lyons lifted it. What had been a rivalry suddenly erupted into all-out war. The fallout was fast and brutal. First came the car chases, then the gunfire. What followed was years of bloodshed, stabbings, shootings, murders, each side hitting back harder than the last. By 2006, the feud burst from the shadows into public view with the shooting at the Lamb Hill garage. The burst of gunfire left 21-year-old Michael Lyons dead and the headlines screaming. Just 10 days after Michael's murder, David Lyons received a chilling message in the post, a ransom note written in cold, blunt terms. "The boys owe me £25,000, and I want what's owed to me. It's for drugs. They all knew what it's about. They've got to pay the piper." David Lyons didn't hand over a penny. Instead, he handed the ransom letter straight to the police. From there, detectives moved in. The alleged gunmen, Raymond Anderson and James MacDonald, were placed under constant surveillance. The trail led officers to a house in Gartham Lock, where they made a chilling discovery: a cache of military-grade weapons, including a machine gun, grenades, and boxes of ammunition. In recorded conversations, the pair referred to themselves as the Untouchables and spoke cryptically about the mysterious Piper, the same figure mentioned in the threatening letter. Further investigation linked them to weapons stolen from army barracks, deepening the sense that this was more than just a local turf dispute. It was organized crime at its most dangerous. In May 2008, Anderson, 49, and MacDonald, 27, were found guilty. Each received a 35-year sentence, later reduced on appeal. The trial judge, Lord Hardy, didn't mince his words. He called the killing a cold-blooded, premeditated assassination. Among the early casualties of the Lyons-Daniel feud were two notorious names: Kevin Gerbil Carroll, a key enforcer for the Daniel clan, and Johnny Lyons, brother of David and Eddie Sr. In January 2003, both men were shot in separate attacks just 11 days apart. 3 years later, the conflict plunged to an unprecedented low. In November 2006, Carroll allegedly drove a 4x4 into a cemetery using a tow rope to rip down the headstone of Gary Lyons, Eddie Sr.'s young son, who had died of leukemia at just 8 years old. The desecration was an outrage. Days later, Carroll struck again, ambushing Eddie Lyons Jr. and a friend in Bells Hill, Lanarkshire, and opening fire. But vengeance was swift. Within a week, Carroll himself was seriously wounded in a retaliatory shooting in Bishopbriggs, East Dunbartonshire. By now, police were pouring resources into trying to contain the bloodshed, but the violence only escalated. Kevin Gerbil Carroll had a reputation for being the most volatile figure in the entire feud. His vendetta against the Lyons clan ran deep, stretching back to his school days when he was said to have been bullied by members of the family. Kevin Gerbil Carroll earned his nickname from a character in the TV puppet series Roland Rat, but there was nothing playful about him. He forged close ties with the feared Daniel crime clan, and by 19 was already serving a stint behind bars for car theft. By his mid-20s, Carroll had climbed high in Glasgow's underworld, becoming a major player on the city's north side. In 2004, he was charged with attempting to murder a friend of Eddie Lyons Sr. with an AK-47. The case collapsed, but the message was clear. Carroll was a man capable of extreme violence. He shared a £217,000 home in Lennoxtown with Jamie Daniels' daughter, and to outsiders, it seemed he lived untouchable. But behind the scenes, his behavior was spiraling. By 2009, Carroll was out of control. He terrorized rivals with a wave of so-called alien abductions, kidnappings so disorientating and brutal that victims told police they couldn't remember a thing about what happened. Torture, robbery, humiliation. Carroll's reign was built on fear. His ruthlessness earned him countless enemies, and he knew it. He covered his tracks obsessively, making himself a difficult target. If anyone wanted to take him down, it would require an ambush unlike anything Glasgow had ever seen. On the 13th of January 2010, Kevin Gerbil Carroll arrived at the Asda supermarket car park in Rob Royston, Glasgow, for what he called a lunchtime business meeting. Just days earlier, he had shot Eddie Lyons Jr. in the arm, another calculated strike in the long-running feud. Now Carroll was moving to poach drug dealer Stephen Glenn, a man with ties to the Lyons family. A later trial heard how Carroll leaned in and issued his trademark threat. "You're working for me now. Anybody that doesn't fall into line is going to get banged." Minutes later, at exactly 1:23 p.m., Carroll sat in the back of a black Audi A3. A Volkswagen Golf came screaming up to a halt in front of it, cutting off any escape. His two associates bolted, leaving him trapped in the back of the three-door car. Two masked men burst from the Golf, guns raised. The first round smashed through the rear passenger windows, followed by a relentless barrage. Carroll was hit in the head, chest, and torso. 13 bullets in just 25 seconds. It was a precision execution in broad daylight. Within days, William Buff Patterson, suspected of orchestrating the hit, fled to Spain. His face later appeared on the UK Serious Organised Crime Agency's Most Wanted list, but eventually, after more than 4 years on the run, Patterson walked into a police station in Madrid and surrendered. At William Buff Patterson's trial in the High Court in Glasgow, Kevin Carroll's notoriety was laid bare when prosecutors read out a staggering list of 99 potential suspects in his murder. Patterson was found guilty and handed a 22-year prison sentence. It was not a spontaneous event, Judge Lord Armstrong told him. It was, in effect, an execution. The killing, carried out in front of stunned lunchtime shoppers, was one of the most public gangland hits in Scotland's history, and it sent a dangerous message. If this could happen in broad daylight, in a busy supermarket car park, nothing was off limits. The bloodshed didn't end there. Carroll's murder opened the door to a new wave of brazen high-profile attacks. In September 2015, gangland enforcer Ross Sherlock was making what should have been a routine school run in Bishopbriggs. The kitchen fitter turned gangster was strolling down a lane from St. Helens Primary, chatting casually with another parent while their children walked ahead. Then, out of nowhere, a man in fluorescent yellow workwear appeared. He pulled a gun, aimed, and opened fire. Sherlock bolted, but not before a bullet shattered his arm. Parents screamed, children froze, and the quiet lane turned into a scene of chaos. Two men, William Burns and Alexander Porter, were later charged with attempted murder. Both walked free after being cleared in court. Then, 2 years later, in January 2017, Ross Monaghan had just dropped his daughter at St. George's Primary School in Pennilly when violence came looking for him. A gunman gave chase, firing a round that tore into Monaghan's shoulder. The weapon had been concealed in a baby buggy, a chilling sign of the planning behind the hit. Within days, Monaghan vanished to Spain's infamous Costa del Crime. he was no stranger to the crosshairs. Monaghan had stood trial for the murder of Kevin Gerbil Carroll back in 2010, only to be acquitted when a judge ruled that the evidence was too thin to convict. 2 men were later tried for the attempted hit outside St. George's, but were cleared. Instead, they were eventually jailed for other organised crime offences. Between the high-profile school shootings, another seismic shift rocked Glasgow's underworld. In July 2016, Jamie Daniel, once a scrap metal dealer in Possil, later a millionaire crime boss, lost his battle with cancer at the age of 58. A convicted heroin smuggler, Daniel built his empire on drugs and, in later years, a lucrative trade in counterfeit cigarettes. His death left a gaping power vacuum in the Daniel crime clan. There was no clear heir. His son, Xander Sutherland, was serving a 13.5-year sentence for heroin trafficking. Then, in a move straight out of a crime thriller, Sutherland fled the UK while on day release and surfaced in Norway, where he is now fighting extradition. Sensing weakness, the Lyons crew pounced. They launched a ruthless campaign of intimidation against Daniel loyalists, 5 attempted murders in just 5 months, making it clear they intended to seize the upper hand. Robert Daniel was the first target. On the 8th of December 2016, his car was rammed by another vehicle before he was chased into a house in Rob Royston. Once inside, he was struck twice on the back of the head with what he later told police was a hatchet or a machete. Asked in court if he was aware of any ill feeling between the Daniel and Lyons families, Robert, 29, replied, "Not that I know of." Just a month later, Glasgow gangster Thomas Bilsland suffered a fractured skull after he was set upon in Glasgow's Cran Hill. The next victim, Gary Petty, was targeted after he visited an Italian restaurant on the 7th of March 2017. A court heard the 22-year-old was getting out his Volkswagen Golf when he was ambushed in Mary Hill. Then, Ryan Fitzsimmons was attacked by a masked gang on the 28th of April 2017 outside his home in Clydebank, West Dumbartonshire. The former soldier, who was left brain damaged, told the trial it felt like death was coming. His mother Geraldine was so affected by what happened that she suffered a heart attack in the street. Fitzsimmons told juries he had no enemies, yet they heard that his older brother had once been charged with shooting Ross Monaghan, the same man acquitted of Carroll's murder in 2010. The most brutal crime on the 13-page indictment was the assault on Stephen Bonzo Daniel on the 18th of May 2017. After dropping off friends, Bonzo was driving his Skoda Octavia home when a Volkswagen Golf deliberately rammed his car in Milton. An Audi S3 soon joined the pursuit, the 3 vehicles hurtling through North Glasgow at speeds reaching 100 miles per hour. The chase ended when Bonzo's car crashed on an M8 off-ramp in Port Dundas. The impact knocked him unconscious, and the 39-year-old later told the court he had no memory of what happened next. As he slumped at the wheel, Bonzo was subjected to a savage attack with bladed weapons, leaving facial injuries so severe that first responders initially feared he had been shot. The court also heard that Bonzo's car had been fitted with a tracking device, though he insisted he had no enemies prior to the terrifying ordeal. Gangland investigations are notoriously difficult, with detectives often confronted by a wall of silence. Yet the very technology the Lyons group used to plan their attacks ultimately allowed officers to build a strong case against them. In May 2019, 6 family associates were sentenced to a combined 104 years in prison after being convicted of 5 murder plots. The judge condemned their attempts to turn Glasgow into a war zone, emphasizing that the city, founded on law and order, could not tolerate such retribution or jungle law tactics. 5 years later, the feud, linked to multiple prison attacks, has returned to the public spotlight, showing that the shadow of violence still lingers over the city. That was it for today's video. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see our next videos.